You are trying to kill my kids. Really?
All of us are getting worse by the day.
I would certainly not bathe a newborn child or a young infant in this bad water.
And what did they ever take water out of the Flint River for? Everyone knows it's a filthy river.
The blame game over the Flint, Michigan water disaster is underway.
Why would they be paying for water that they cannot even use, that is poisoning them?
It's a failure of our system.
When there's a scandal, follow the money.
A lot of your contributors have contracts with that. Is this also a patronage deal?
Our contributor and Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Charlie LeDuff discovered big campaign donors cashing in on the disaster, and the experts hired to make the water safe.
Looks abandoned. No lights, no people.
Plus, we'll dig deeper into the race to the White House with the odd math that works against Bernie Sanders and the setup that keeps Jeb Bush in the game.
People run out of money and people run out of time.
And we'll show you why Marco Rubio's debate gaffe crushed him in New Hampshire and why it will continue to dog him on the trail.
Barack Obama knows what he's doing. Oh, Chris Christie.
This is Money, Power, and Politics. Well, thank you for joining us. We have a lot of ground to cover, but let's start with Marco Rubio's reaction to the results in New Hampshire.
Data inaccurate, does not compute.
Yep, Rubio is paying for one bad night he'll never forget.
And let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. But I would add this, let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 30-second speech where you talk about how great America is at the end of it doesn't solve one problem for one person.
This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
There it is, the memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's
there it is, everybody.
Marco Rubio is not a robot, but he played one on TV.
Go, Marco! Barack Obama knows exactly what he's doing. Barack Obama knows exactly what he's doing.
And he could not live that down.
Robot!
And when your campaign literally has to fight off a robot invasion, it just does not look good. Rubio is trying to move past his humiliation in New Hampshire, and he keeps saying that he's focused on the next 2 weeks. But it didn't help when they caught him trying to sneak out of New Hampshire in disguise.
Have you brought any fruits or vegetables onto the planet?
2 weeks.
Excuse me?
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
When you recycle canned statements and your opponent makes fun of you for it, and you respond by recycling the same canned statements again, your opponents can make you look robotic.
The single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. The greatest nation in the history of mankind. The single greatest nation.
The single greatest nation in all mankind.
You have to wonder what gave Rubio the notion that he could deflect the heat just by repeating unrelated canned statements and still expect to win.
Do you think it was a problem to have on-duty law enforcement there?
I'm very appreciative of both their support and those that come to my events.
You didn't answer that question. Should there be discipline?
Look, I'm appreciative of everybody that comes to my events.
I guess Rubio just learned what may pass in Florida won't fly when you're running for president.
I will never embarrass you.
But he did, and he knows it.
I know many people disappointed. I'm disappointed. It's on me. I did not do well on Saturday night. That will never happen again. That will never happen again. Happen again. Happen again. 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 Again.
Okay, we added those last few, but remember, Rick Perry only totally blanked out one time.
Oops.
And Howard Dean only screamed like a maniac one time.
Crank that Howard. Crank that Dean.
So now Marco Rubio is on thin ice because he looks silly and fed a narrative that he's programmed at a time when voters crave authenticity.
I left my last page of the speech. Does anybody have my last page?
So unlike his water gaffe, Rubio cannot laugh this off, even if he claims all the water shorted out his circuits.
I think I just drank Clint Eastwood's water. Thank you.
Well, Rubio is hoping the people of South Carolina move beyond that, and he certainly can recover, but he's facing some tough competition.
And we will move through South Carolina.
John Kasich got a bounce out of New Hampshire, but he may struggle in South Carolina because he's comparatively moderate, and most of South Carolina is about as conservative as it gets.
And so now on to South Carolina.
Evangelical conservatives and Tea Party Republicans who want to shake up Washington give Ted Cruz and Donald Trump a big advantage.
We are going now to South Carolina.
Kasich, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio will fight for the moderate Republicans who tend to live along the Carolina coast. And to that end, all three will try to dip into the same well.
South Carolina, we are on the way.
Rubio is reeling, but he will have some help from some powerful South Carolina politicians, including Tim Scott and Trey Gowdy.
But we're going to give him a boost in South Carolina.
But Jeb Bush has also built a strong ground game in South Carolina. And notice how he's embracing his family's legacy here.
I'm part of the establishment because I'm the proud son of George H.W. Bush and Barbara Bush and the brother of George W. Bush. That's why I'm in the establishment.
The Bush family is well liked and respected, at least among those establishment Republicans along the coast.
Jeb Bush will play very well in my state. 41 and 43 did really well here. The Bush name is golden in South Carolina.
Our pollster spent this week polling in South Carolina, and they found Donald Trump with a big lead, 17 points ahead of Ted Cruz, followed by Rubio, Bush, Kasich, and Carson. Coming up, we'll show you how Bernie Sanders can win more votes and still lose the fight, and why both races may deliver some big surprises this summer. This is President Obama whiffing at golf.
He had no punch. He couldn't hit.
And look at that. He just launched his cell phone from the clip on his shorts belt.
He's swinging like a sissy.
And while he shows flashes in basketball, we've seen the president miss 14 shots in a row. He couldn't even make a basic layup. At times, he couldn't even make the net. And now a new progressive is promising change. After wiping out Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, 74-year-old Bernie Sanders nailed it on the basketball court with his grandkids. He has energy, a passionate fan base, and after being down 40 points in the polls, he could be the comeback player of the year. As of now, Sanders has picked up 55,000 more votes than Clinton, but he still has a big problem on the scoreboard. After all that, Sanders picked up 44 delegates, compared to Clinton, who lost badly in New Hampshire and picked up a total of 394.
Say what?
That's right. You need 2,382 delegates to win the Democratic nomination, and hundreds of those delegates are so-called superdelegates. They get to pick whoever they want, regardless of the primary or caucus results. And those Democratic Party insiders overwhelmingly favor Hillary Clinton, which sort of feeds into Sanders' battle cry.
People are sick and tired of establishment politics, and they want real change.
But the races in both parties are just getting started.
And if you don't have a seatbelt, go get one.
In the Republican race, you need 1,236 delegates to win the nomination. And even after South Carolina and Nevada weigh in by the end of this month, 95% of those delegates will still be up for grabs. A dozen states will vote March 1st, but even after that, nearly 70% of the delegates will still be up for grabs. Another 11 states will weigh in by March 12th, but none of those are winner-take-all, so delegates may be spread all across the pack.
You remember, Mitt Romney didn't really become the presumptive nominee 4 years ago until about mid-April. So, you know, this is going to take a while.
Florida is the first winner-take-all state on March 15th. And while Trump has been leading here in the Republican race, the polls in Florida can turn on a dime. And Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are both hoping they can last, then cash in with a home field advantage.
They will narrow just kind of organically because people run out of money and people run out of time. And I'm in it for the long haul.
By the way, Michigan votes March 8th, 1 week before Florida. And that's when the candidates in both parties will have to confront a national scandal. Coming up, our government poisoned children.
All of our hair is falling out.
We'll dig deeper into the water scandal in Flint, Michigan. And Charlie LeDuff found out who's cashing in. Flint, Michigan had clean drinking water, but to save money, our government switched it to dirty water with so much lead it met the definition of hazardous waste. So Charlie LeDuff tracked down the engineers, the politicians, and the money.
Flint, a broke town in a hardscrabble county, grows tired of paying extortionate rates to the Detroit Water Department, a department riddled with its own corruption. So regional officials designed their own pipeline from Lake Huron, parallel to Detroit's, in an attempt to cut Detroit out of the picture. Will this actually save money? That's still being debated. But why spend hundreds of millions of borrowed dollars you don't have? Lots of jobs for one thing, and lots of contracts. Look at all of that. Jeff Wright, the Genesee County Drain Commissioner, is the driving force behind the new water project known as the Karagandhi, or the KWA.
There's a lot of power and a lot of money in that. Right? You pushed it forward. A lot of your contributors have contracts with that. Is this also a patronage deal?
I would say that anybody that's contributed to me has also contributed to Detroit. I cannot control who the contractors are because we do all competitive bidding, period.
Some of those contractors, though, have been caught with their fingers in the Detroit cookie jar, involved in scandals like the unfinished county jail and the Kwame Kilpatrick Water Department. And another big donor to the Drain Commissioner is a central player in the Flint water crisis. Some background. Back in 2013, state-appointed emergency manager Ed Kurtz decided Flint could save money if it quit Detroit's water and joined the new pipeline. Kurtz and Wright, the Drain Commissioner, issued a joint statement back then saying there'd be, quote, no looking back. But where would Flint now get its water until the pipeline was ready? Kurtz decided on the Flint River. Serving people river water was supposed to save Flint more than $2 million a year. But the savings weren't passed on to the customer. In fact, people's water bills never went down. Instead, that $2 million was supposed to be funneled back into Flint's old treatment plant for upgrades. The problem here? The necessary upgrades weren't made. And you know what happened.
Really?
If it all sounds like a sick science experiment to save a couple bucks, it was, says Scott Kincaid, a Flint City councilman.
You know, it's just a travesty for our community that they would allow for the system to be so corrosive that it would put lead in the water and our residents and children would drink it.
So who was the expert hired to help switch over to the Flint River? Kurtz picked a contributor of the Drain Commissioners, Land Engineering, based in Houston, with the storefront office in Flint.
We never got consulted, and we never seen any bids or evaluations of any other companies. It was a contract with Land, and it was done by the emergency manager, and it's a failure of our system.
Though the company was hired for its so-called expertise, carbon filters and corrosion controls weren't put into place when the river started flowing from the taps. Immediately, residents began to complain that the water was making them sick. E. coli, then methane, now the lead. Local politicians who had rubber-stamped the deal back then now feel betrayed.
Looking back, what kind of grade you give them?
It's probably about a D when you look at the personnel. They didn't have the training, the licenses that should have been in place. They met minimal standards, but so often we're all now looking back at this minimal, and that's what left our community unprotected.
It was up to Land, it was up to the DEQ, it was up to the governor and the treasurer's office to make sure that the water was safe to drink, and they all failed us.
We made multiple calls to Land Engineering. The company declined to answer our questions. We stopped by their local offices several times.
Wow. Looks abandoned. No lights, no people. Nobody's been watering the plants.
We called Kurtz. We stopped by his house. We're told he's in Florida.
Starting to see a pattern.
After all this, Flint continues to employ land engineering. Its contract, which began at $170,000, has now ballooned to nearly $4 million. In fact, the company has recently been awarded another $900,000 to address the lead debacle. Flint's mayor seems unaware of it.
Hi, Mayor. Are you happy with the work they've done, and why did they get that $1 million extension?
The firm that was...
That's the engineering firm that's in charge of the plant to bring it up to speed, Lockwood, Andrews, and Newman.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to comment on that right now because we're still looking at some of that. And I really want to get some more information before I, comment on that one.
Flint is back to drinking Detroit's water in the short term. But sometime later this year, the pipeline from Lake Huron will be completed and raw water will once again flow into the Flint treatment plant. The $1 million question is this: can we trust what flows out?
All right, Charlie, this whole water scandal was framed on a decision to save $2 million or thereabouts a year. How does that compare with how much Michigan has cut taxes, particularly for big business?
Business had its taxes cut $2 billion a year. For Flint to have safe water, the infrastructure upgrades they needed over 2 years was about $5 million. So we needed $2 million to keep 100,000 people safe, and yet we couldn't find it in a $2 billion tax cut. Now it's going to cost us $1 billion by some estimates to just fix the damage.
And
who's in charge?
Yeah, and let's talk about the contractors. How much in the end will those contractors, who happen to be many of them campaign donors, make out in this?
Well, the job is projected to be $300 million. That's not including the $50 million to get the plant up and running that we didn't budget for, so there you go. They had clean Detroit water. They decided to go off clean Detroit water and drink the Flint River, right? This difference, charge them the same amount. Take this savings and put it into making the plant safe. The problem there is you're already drinking water out of a plant that's not yet safe. What moron, what group of morons came up with this? They were Democrats, they were Republicans, they were contractors, they were trade union people, they were city council people. Everybody thought, hey man, plenty of money to, by the way, borrowed money. And grandchildren pay for it. We already had a water system.
Charlie, thank you very much for your work, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, brother. It's always good to be here.
Coming up, consider the most important question facing America today.
Could you, would you, with a goat?
Moments in politics we'll never forget, and a special salute to the candidates we've left behind. Okay, so Chris Christie and Carly Fiorina are the latest to drop out of the race, but we can't forget the others that we've left behind. Rick Perry and Lindsey Graham, for example, did not even make it to Iowa because they got roasted by Donald Trump.
I see Rick Perry the other day. He's doing very poorly in the polls. He put glasses on so people will think he's smart. And it just doesn't work. So Lindsey Graham says to me, please, please, whatever you can do. I'm saying to myself, what's this guy, a beggar? He's like begging me to help him. He doesn't seem like a very bright guy. He actually probably seems to me not as bright, honestly, as Rick Perry.
Okay, and now here's our official send-off to some of the rest.
You voted for the very bill that made banks bigger.
The Glass-Steagall was my very first vote. I just arrived. My dad had died in office. I was appointed to the office. It was my very first vote.
Are you saying you didn't know what you were voting for?
I just arrived at the Senate.
We're going to be here through the month of January. We're going to win Iowa.
what do you list as Marco Rubio's top accomplishment that made you decide to endorse him?
My feeling on Marco is someone who has tremendous potential, tremendous gifts. I guess it's hard to say their accomplishments.
List one accomplishment that Marco Rubio has achieved in 4 years in the United States Senate.
The bottom line is there isn't a whole lot of accomplishments, Joe.
I often sound like a Republican in a room full of Democrats, or a Democrat in a room full of Republicans, and actually I take that as a compliment.
We can win right now, or we can be the biggest fools of all time.
You have numbnuts. Your rear end's gonna get thrown in jail, idiot.
Sit down and shut up.
Which had previously brought a challenge in federal court.
I will suspend my campaign immediately.
And there we go. We'll join you next week. Money, Power, and Politics. Thank you so much for watching.